I'm here to talk about the state of the developer ecosystem. You heard a little bit about this in the keynote. And so obviously Atlassian has a lot invested in our developer ecosystem. We're going to talk about first, why are we here? Why do we do developer relations? What is it? What do we get out of it? And what can we offer to you? We're going to talk about what we have been up to over the last year as developer relations. And then my colleague Jens is going to come up and talk about what we've got planned for the next year, what's new in developer relations. Before I get started, I want to introduce to you the entire Atlassian developer relations team. I'll ask these folks to stand up as I call their name. First of all, Ben Spiegman and Dan Rosen. These guys are developer relations developers based in San Francisco. They work with me. We've got Jens Schumacher. He's been the product manager for developer relations for the last year. I'm Jonathan. And then we've got Samuel Barragode, who is a longtime Atlassian employee who's recently joined the developer relations team. He's based in France, and so unfortunately wasn't able to join us for the summit this year. So why are we here? Why is developer relations here? We really like to think about this in three ways. First, and I would say primarily, we're here to help you build plugins. So we are responsible for all of the tools, all of the infrastructure, all the documentation that will help you get up and running and build awesome plugins. We know that a lot of people build plugins for internal use only. A lot of people build plugins sort of to scratch their own itch and release those as open source. And we have a lot of people building plugins as commercial applications. And we're really excited about all three of those. We're here to help you share. So once you've got your plugin, we benefit, and our community benefits, obviously, if you share that with the public. Again, either open source or through commercial adoption. And then lastly, we're here to help you collaborate with each other. We've got hundreds of active plugin developers and hundreds of active plugin projects. And so we want to make sure that if you're a developer and you want some help, we can get you that help from the community. Or if you are a user and there's a plugin that you use that you want to extend or enhance, there's an avenue for you to do that. We really get excited when new people raise their hand and say, hey, I want to pitch in on that project. I've got some great ideas. And I've been seeing that happen more and more over the last few years, and I'm really jazzed about it. So the state of the ecosystem. We really think about the developer ecosystem at Atlassian in two ways. The first way is from the perspective of an Atlassian user, somebody who owns our products and wants to enhance them. And so we've got some really exciting numbers, some of which you heard in the keynote. But we have over 500 plugins in the plugin exchange, and that's up more than 250 plugins this year. So there's an incredible amount of activity and growth in that ecosystem. So these are all things that will extend and enhance your products. And can make them do new and amazing things. You saw a ton of those at the launch pad just an hour ago. I was super impressed with the companies up there. They're doing things greater than I even thought were possible. And then this time last year, I don't have exact stats on this, but I think this time last year we had between 20 and 30 commercial plugins. And this year we have more than 80. So these are people who are launching out on their own, trying to build full businesses on the Atlassian platform. And just like Scott and Mike said this morning, we get so excited when that happens because we love bringing more people into the community and into the ecosystem. And clearly, we've had a lot of folks having success with this. So that really excites us. But of course, the other way to think about the developer ecosystem is from the perspective of plugin developers, which I assume we have a lot of those in the audience. And we kind of like to think about that in terms of what is the, I guess, addressable market in the Atlassian family. And so we have over 18,000 active commercial customers. So 13,000 JIRA installations out there somewhere, 9,000 Confluence installations, 2,000 Fisheye and Crucible, 1,000 Bamboo installations. So these all represent either users or customers or collaborators for you guys in your projects. And then over and above that, we have 50,000 starter licenses that have been installed since we started the starter program. These are full-fledged, fully capable copies of the product. The only limitation is that they're limited to 10 users, but in every other respect, they're exactly the same. So these also represent an addressable market to you guys. We've got a great program where a lot of commercial plugin authors have offered their own starter licenses. So if you're running a starter license of JIRA, you might also get a starter license of Minya, for example. But that's not required. If you wanted to build a plugin and sell it at full price to 10 users, you can totally do that too. So almost 70,000 customers out there in the field that you can take advantage of. And we know that those customers are super interested in the plugin ecosystem. We had 75,000 plugins downloaded last month. As Scott said in the keynote, that's a new plugin downloaded every 30 seconds. So the community is really, really invested in this plugin ecosystem, and they're excited to use them, and they're just out there waiting for the next great idea. And then the last number that I want to mention is that last year at this time, when I was giving a similar talk at last Atlas Camp, there was exactly one developer relations person, and that was me. And now we have 5 full-time developer relations staff. So we've been able to do so much more in the last year with this additional investment in terms of the resources that we can put towards developer relations. And I'm going to talk a little bit about all the stuff that we've been able to do in the last year, which has really ramped, I think, the level of improvement in terms of tools and in terms of the ecosystem. So what have we been up to? I'm going to talk about 5 things, 5 awesome tools for plugin developers. Plugins 2, the plugins framework itself, the Atlassian SDK, the investments we made in documentation, the Atlassian Plugin Exchange, and then JIRA Studio for plugins. So to start with plugins 2, this is the plugins framework that runs through every Atlassian product. It was introduced first at Atlas Camp 2 years ago. Since then, we've done, I think, 6 major releases and 34 minor releases, so we've continued to invest in it and continue to drive it forward. We make sure that the most recent version of plugins 2 always ships with the products as they come out, roughly every 3 months. So we try to stay up to date. And every time we do that, we introduce new functionality for plugin developers. And so I'm going to talk about some of those things right now. The first thing that we added was the ability to define your own servlet plugin modules. So you've always been able to have servlets in Atlassian plugins, but now you can have filters and context params and context listeners as well. So basically, we expose the full power of the servlet container to you. So a plugin author can build entire new chunks of functionality that do or don't interact with the host application, depending on what your needs are. And you can do it in a cross-product way. So it works exactly the same in every Atlassian application. So that's been really exciting. We've taken advantage of that in our own development. We've added the ability to define your own plugin modules. So this is incredibly powerful. It's relatively new. There are not a ton of people taking advantage of it, but it opens up huge new opportunities. So as you may know, if you've done any plugin development, plugins are made up of modules. For example, a macro in Confluence is a type of plugin module, and a custom field in JIRA is a type of plugin module. And there are more than 30 of those, probably closer to 50 if you count across all the different products. Some of them are shared. They're the same in every product, and some of them are individual. But what plugins 2 allows you to do is you, as a plugin, can define new types like this. So a simple example would be that we have a code syntax highlighter in Confluence. You could plug in new language highlighters, language colorization algorithms through a plugin type that we know nothing about, that the Confluence platform doesn't provide, but your plugin could do that. And so I know some people have started to take advantage of this, and there's a ton of power there. So I encourage you to think about this capability as you're designing your applications and what you might want to do with it. As you saw in the keynote, we've invested a lot into the user experience over the last year. And so you're starting to see some of that come out in JIRA 4, JIRA 4.1, 4.2, and onward. And I'm sure if you're a user of Confluence, you've seen a lot of user experience improvements there as well. Well, the benefit for us as plugin developers is that we can take advantage of all that infrastructure that we've built inside the products. So better user experience typically in our scenario means a lot more use of JavaScript, a lot more use of web standards. And so we've thought about how to make that fast and efficient for the user. One of the things that we have added to plugins 2 is auto batching and auto minification of web resources. So web resources are things like JavaScript, CSS, images, stuff that your plugin would download that is not that's not Java itself. So without you guys having to do anything, just by including web resources in your plugin, we will automatically batch those up so that the user has one download instead of many, and then we'll automatically minify those things. So we strip out white space and comments and unnecessary stuff that would slow things down. So that's helped our front-end performance quite a bit, and we want to make sure that plugins get to take advantage of all the work that we did. Another area that we have invested in a lot in the user experience is a library called Atlassian User Interface, AUI. So this is not part of plugins 2 per se, but it is another framework we've developed that ships in all of our applications. And essentially what it is a library of shared UI components. So things like drop-downs and dialog boxes and menus and tabs, things that you would take advantage of in lots of standard places in your plugins. And by using AUI to build these things, you get to utilize the same visual language that we've developed for JIRA and Confluence in your plugins. It means a lot less code for you, and it means that as we move forward and we push, add more things into AUI and advance them, your plugins can take advantage of them with much less work than having to try and chase the, the ever-moving target of what the JIRA and Confluence user experiences are like. And lastly, we have given you the ability in Plugins 2.5, which is our newest release. It'll be out in the betas that you heard about this morning, so 4.2 and Confluence 3.3, the ability to insert your own content. The two ways to do this. One is you can insert web resources into various contexts. So you can define a context like all admin pages, or all issue pages, or all edit pages. And then in your plugin, you can say, I want to put this JavaScript and this image and this CSS on every page that is in the admin context. So this gives you the way to insert functionality into our applications with more power and flexibility than you've ever had before. So you don't have to wait. You don't have to use one of our our existing plugin points or our existing web items or a custom field or whatever. You can insert new functionality using JavaScript anywhere in the app. So I'm really excited about that. Web panels are a similar technology, just for HTML content. And I want to point out that my colleague John Conwell is giving a talk on Plugins 2 and OSGI this afternoon at 5 o'clock in this room. So if you want to learn more about Plugins 2 and what it can do for you, as well as how to overcome some of the typical gotchas, his is going to be a great talk, and I think you will learn a lot. Next up is the Atlassian Plugin SDK. So we released this at Atlas Camp this year, Atlas Camp 09. That was back in October, November. And since that time, we've done, I think, 8 major releases, responding to all the feedback that we've gotten from the community. And this is the best way to get started developing a plugin. We've had a fairly complicated plugin system over the last few years. We use Maven 2 to provide a lot of the infrastructure for plugin development, and that caused a lot of problems for people getting set up. People who weren't familiar with Maven. It's also kind of it's a very complex piece of software that requires quite a bit of configuration. So we hid that away in the Atlassian SDK. So we package a Maven that you can use. We pre-package the settings that you will need. We put everything behind nice shell scripts. So if you are brand new at plugin development, you can you can download this, install it, and get up and running with a template plugin in less than 10 minutes. And it has drastically cut down the number of questions that we've seen on forums and elsewhere about setup. So we think it seems to be working pretty well. This will ensure that you're creating the plugins following our best practices, everything that we know about how to set up and structure a plugin project. It'll make sure that you are targeting the latest versions of the application. You can actually even write one plugin and then test it against multiple applications and multiple versions of that application just by specifying things with the command line. So if you have a plugin that you need to work across Confluence 3.0, 3.1, and 3.2, you can, with simple command lines, you can test against all 3 of those. So it's really exciting. My colleague Ben Speakman is going to talk right here next and give you an in-depth demo of exactly what the Atlassian Plugin SDK can do, and I think show you sort of a 0 to 60 how to get started with it live on screen. Thirdly, documentation. So documentation is one of those tasks that's never finished. It's sort of the foundation of developer relations in one way I think about it. But we're constantly striving to improve and increase the amount of documentation that we have. And I want to tell you one story about what we were able to do this spring that I got really excited about. The tech writers in Sydney came up with this idea to have a documentation sprint. And what they did was they set aside 3 days. They pulled in 30 people from all over the company and, frankly, all around the world. And they all sat in a room like this around tables and did nothing but write tutorials. So they started at 0. They each picked a popular tutorial that someone had asked for, and they built them from scratch. They wrote all the code. They checked it in Subversion. They wrote the documentation. They tested them on each other. They reviewed them in groups. And by the end of that 3 days, we had 18 brand new tutorials, bringing our total up to around 40. So it was hugely successful. We really, really got excited to see the 5 or 6 people from outside Atlassian who were able to participate. Some actually came into the office. Some participated via Skype. But it was really, really successful. So we're planning to do this again soon, probably late this summer or early fall. And we would really love some, your participation. So keep an eye on the blog for when we're going to be doing this again. Fourth thing is the Atlassian Plugin Exchange. So as you may know, we launched this last year at Summit 2009. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we've doubled the number of plugins in there. So this is, I guess the thing I want to stress for you as plugin developers is that this is the one source of truth about your plugin. Everything that we need to know, everything that our apps need to know, like the UPM, everything that your users need to know should be in here. We have space for full compatibility information. We have space for release notes. We have space for sort of marketing material, screenshots. If you want people to find your plugin, you need to make sure it's in here and its listings are complete and attractive. So I would encourage you to spend as much time as you can on the Atlassian Plugin Exchange. I would say one of the most important things to get right is the compatibility information. So you can specify which versions of your plugin, as you'll see in this example down the left-hand side, work with which versions of the application, as you'll see across the top. So getting this information right is really important so that we can show your plugin to the appropriate set of users who can actually take advantage of it. This is all done manually, so it's up to you, it's your responsibility as a plugin author to make sure that this is in there and correct. The last thing I want to talk about is JIRA Studio for plugins. We introduced this in December, and I like to think about this as sort of the back-end partner of the Atlassian Plugin Exchange. So the Atlassian Plugin Exchange is geared towards people finding your plugins, so people on the outside. JIRA Studio for plugins is geared toward your development process. This is JIRA Studio, if you're not familiar with it, is all of our products packaged into one in a hosted development stack. So you get JIRA, you get Confluence, you get Fisheye, you get Subversion, you get Crucible for code reviews, and you get Bamboo for continuous integration. So you've got the world's best development suite right there for free to use for your plugin. Right now, most people who are using JIRA Studio are doing it for free and open source plugins, but it is not limited to that. So if you have a commercial plugin or even one that you just want to keep private, we can certainly set that up for you. All you need to do is email us at Developer Relations, and we can hook you up with a project that meets your specifications. If you're not familiar with JIRA Studio, if you've never used it, I would encourage you to check out Friday at 2:15, a talk called Development in the Cloud that will talk about exactly why JIRA Studio is so great and why I'm so excited about it. My team uses it every day and really, really love it. So 5 awesome tools for plugin developers, things that we've done over the last year. The Plugins 2 framework. This is the way we're moving forward. Everybody should be using Plugins 2. If you have a Plugins 1 plugin still, I would encourage you to think about migrating that over to Plugins 2. It's relatively easy to do. There's documentation about how to make that migration. And by doing so, you can take advantage of all the new functionality that we're continuing to roll out and the security and sandboxing that the Plugins 2 framework provides. The Atlassian SDK, the best way to start developing quickly. Hides a lot of the complexity, gets you up and running fast. The documentation, we're continuing to grow our docs. The Atlassian Plugin Exchange. It's how to make sure your plugin can be found by users. And then JIRA Studio for plugins, the world's best development tools for your plugin. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jens, who's going to talk a little bit about the plans we have for the next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. So the past year has been amazing for the Atlassian plugin ecosystem. And that's largely due to you guys and all the plugin developers out there contributing and helping us build the community that we have today. Like 75,000 downloads is just amazing, and I'm just mind-boggling that number. So the Atlassian Plugin Exchange helped us to get there to 75,000 downloads. And the Atlassian SDK helped developers to get started faster developing plugins for Atlassian tools. And it even allows our CEO, Scott Farquhar, to develop a plugin in 10 minutes, and he doesn't write much code anymore. You can trust me on that. I'm really glad about that. So Jonathan already mentioned that we have released a whole bunch of tools last year that help you deploy plugins, publish plugins, and develop plugins. And today I'm going to talk about a couple more tools that we made available today for you to make plugin deployment and publishing plugins easier, and developing plugins and testing plugins easier. So I'm going to talk first about the Universal Plugin Manager and tell you why it's really important for administrators and for plugin developers to have this tool. And the second tool I want to talk about is Bamboo, and why you should test your plugins and why that is important. And last but not least, I want to talk about rapid application development and how Atlassian tools and the plugin system can help you develop application for internal use or to share with the community. So we're going to start with Universal Plugin Manager, but I don't want to start with the version that we have today. I want to go 4 years back to the Code Guys competition in 2006. For those of you who don't know Code Guys, it's our yearly plugin competition. We ask developers to develop a plugin within a certain time frame, and after this time frame is over, we evaluate the plugins and rate the plugins, and then give away prizes for the best plugins there. You can win money and software, so this year we have it again. Come and join us if you would like. You can win a lot of money. I would like to join it too, actually, but I'm not allowed to. It's really a bummer. But in 2006, the winner of this competition was Adaptivist, and they contributed the plugin repository. And that was the first time developers were able to publish a plugin into a central repository and access this repository from within Confluence, from within the administration area, search for plugins and install them. And this really was the first version of the Universal Plugin Manager that we have today. So you can see the graph. Confluence, even though Confluence doesn't have as many instances out there as JIRA does, has always been more popular. It always had more downloads, and I think this is largely due to the plugin repository that we had for it, because we don't have this available. We don't had it available until today for JIRA. And as you can see, the spike, that's when we combined the plugin repository with the plugin exchange, and we made it easier for people to publish plugins. Before it was XML-based in the old repository, and now it's a nice GUI, and it's much easier to put a plugin out there and make it available to the community. And this is what took us to 75,000 downloads a month. And we hope that we can increase the JIRA graph as well over the next few months with the Universal Plugin Manager. And you all saw the keynote, I hope, this morning, and Scott already showed up of some amazing features of the Universal Plugin Manager, but I want to highlight a few of them and tell you why they're really important, not only for administrators, but also for plugin developers. So when you first come to the Plugin Manager in the administration UI, you will see the upgrade screen, and the upgrade screen will indicate whether there are any new versions available for plugins you have already installed. And you can download them, like clicking on them and install them really easily, and even with like a one-button click, update all at once. So it makes it much easier. You don't have to hunt down a new version anymore and find them. And for plugin developers, it's a great tool to push out your new updates, new features and bug fixes to the administrators. You just upload it to the plugin exchange and make sure you keep all your data updated, and it will arrive right at the door of the administrators in the administration area. So that's a great feature. The second thing we made easier is the administration and the maintenance of the plugins. Before, in the old plugin manager, if you used it, we displayed system plugins and user-installed plugins in one list. And the list was very long. So it was really hard to keep track of which plugins are actually important and which ones you have to keep track of. So now we split that up in a new plugin manager. We have a separate list for system plugins, which you can look at if you want to, but they going to be updated with the next version of the tool anyway, so you don't really have to worry about them. So you can focus on the user-installed plugins, and you can see what you've installed, and you can manage the modules as well. And that's another topic. We hide away the modules. Before we listed them all at once, and now you can hide them away, or by default they're hidden away. And only if you really want to know what modules are part of a plugin, then you can open that up and enable or disable individual modules. But the biggest piece of feedback that we got over the last few years was that customers said, I don't know if I want to upgrade to the latest version of Confluence because all my plugins might break, and I don't know. So this is why we integrated a new update check feature into the plugin manager. And Scott displayed that this morning already, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because I love it so much. What it allows you to do is you can select the version of the product you want to upgrade to. Let's say you run Confluence 3.0 and you want to upgrade to 3.2 because it has more cool autocomplete stuff, right? So you just select Confluence 3.2 in that list, and then the plugin manager will tell you which of your installed plugins are compatible with this version of Confluence. And if there's a plugin that you heavily rely on and is not compatible, then I advise you not to upgrade because it won't work, most likely. And but you have a chance to contact the plugin author and ask him for a time frame when will it be available. And here again, another point to the list that Jonathan showed before, it's really important for plugin developers to keep their plugins up to date on the plugin exchange. Update the list. When we release a new version, a major version, your plugin will not be automatically compatible with this version. You have to explicitly go in and say my plugin is compatible, because we don't know, we can't test all the 500 plugins we have available in the exchange. So it's up to the developers to take care of this and let the customers know that their plugin is reliable and works with this version. So that brings me to testing your plugins. Of course, you should test your plugins because that gives you, well, first of all, let me start with the API. So when we started the plugin framework, we had to decide whether we give you a limited API with limited access to the data or give you open API where you can access all the core functionality of Confluence and JIRA, all the core tools. The problem is with a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility, and you will have to make sure that when we change stuff under the hood that your plugin works still with the changes. And we're going to help you testing that or making sure that, that those changes don't affect you by providing you Bamboo in Studio for plugins. Jonathan already talked about it. Starting today, we have Bamboo available. If you have a plugin in the Atlassian Studio plugin instance, you can now set up a plan for your plugin that will test your plugin continuously. So first of all, you can write your test and make sure that all the changes you make to the plugin work continuously, and you get notified if they don't, or if somebody else contributes, you get notified if they screw something up. But you can also rely on the plans of our tools. So if we develop a new version of Confluence and we change some APIs, we're going to release a new snapshot build. And as soon as that snapshot build finishes, your tests get kicked off. And you can see whether your plugin and your test still run against this new version of Confluence. So you will be automatically notified if we change some APIs and we accidentally forget to tell you, which happens once in a while as well. Wasn't my fault. But it happens once in a while and will happen in the future, I'm sure. We do our best that it doesn't, but you can be sure if you have a good set of tests that your plugin still works. And now you have a way testing that without you having to click a button all the time. You get notified via email, whatever you set up. So we think that's a great tool. And last but not least, it helps collaboration, right? If somebody wants to contribute to your plugins, and we encourage that, so get together and help each other out. If you like a plugin, you might as well contribute to it and improve it as well. And if there's a good set of tests, then you don't need to be afraid to break anything, because the author will know if you break anything and yourself will be notified as well. So Bamboo is a great tool, and I encourage you to use it for plugin development. And please write tests for your plugins, because that's another good for administrators here. I'm not sure if you're all developers, but the administrator could go in and check out your plugin, see if it has tests, and maybe if they don't have tests and they rely on it, then you might want to cut that short and not install the plugin if they're all red, like here. I don't know why they're all red. The last topic I want to talk about is rapid application development and how our tools can help you develop applications within your company or for the community. To do this, I'm going to give a little example, the RSVP plugin. So a few years back, I was in San Francisco and was sitting in the company apartment on a Saturday night, really sad, and didn't have anything to do, and so I thought I'd write a Confluence plugin, something that I always wanted. I wanted to invite people to the cinema or some company event, and I didn't want to create in Wiki Markup a table where everybody can put their name. So I decided to write the RSVP plugin, and it probably took me about 4 hours to get the first version out there, and it was already integrated with the user management. And on Monday, when I got into the office, I just upload the plugin, and it's available instantly to the whole company. I didn't have to set up an application server for it. I didn't have to create a database for it and get our system administrator to set it all up. I just upload the plugin, and it's instantly available. It took a little bit more to polish it up, but basically, it's really fast to develop applications on top of our tools using the plugin system. And there are just like a few highlights on what you get. You get integration with other systems, with the user management. In Confluence, you can use the pages and block. You can integrate with attachments. And of course, it gives you persistence, which is one of the biggest features there. You can persist your data fairly easily against the API. However, we realized that the persistence is currently very limited. For an RSVP plugin, it works quite nicely. You just store a name. You don't have much data to store. But if you want to create a solution on top of our tool, something bigger, something like Green Hopper against JIRA or TaskDog for Confluence, you will have to do a lot of work to make it scale properly so that you can query the data efficiently. And that's suboptimal right now. And that's something we want to address in the near future. We are just in the beginning and would love your feedback. So at the moment, we're looking at a separate data storage based on active objects. It's similar for like active records on Ruby on Rails for people who are familiar with this. But what it allows you to do is it gives you a separate database for your plugin. It will be sandboxed, so your plugin doesn't affect any data in Confluence, but it will still be backed up when you do a Confluence backup, and it will be stored in the Confluence database. Additionally, we want to integrate it with the search so that you can make your content that you create with your plugin searchable as well, and it should be easy. And it should allow you to create and store a large amount of data and query those data efficiently. You can have relationships, which is not possible right now with the current storage mechanism. So that's something we just starting to work on. We evaluated a lot and gathering requirements, and we would love to feedback. And if you're keen on developing and helping us, it's open source and it's on the Plugin Studio instance under Active Objects, or drop us an email if you're interested to talk about it. I also want to point you to the talk from Jonathan Gilbert at 4:45. He will tell you more about using Confluence as a platform and what tools you get for free when you use Confluence to develop applications. Last but not least, I want to point you at a few resources. The documentation, if you haven't been developing plugins or are fairly new, check out the documentation under developer.atlassian.com. You will find everything about the plugin framework. You will find the tutorials that Jonathan mentioned earlier, and you can get started there easily. There's also a survey that you can fill out and let us know whether you had troubles developing it or not, or getting started. The second resource are the forums, and we have, I mentioned already, a great community. And thanks so much for everyone who helps out on the forums answering questions. And we also have a few developers who look into the forums once in a while to answer questions that the community wasn't able to answer. So please visit the forums if you have any questions. Come and chat to us on IRC. We have an IRC channel. We do have email. You can drop us an email as well. We don't like email as much, but you can send us an email if you want to talk to us directly. You can also follow us on Twitter. We have to get a little bit more active there, Jonathan, but we try hard to announce every news that we have on Twitter and also blog about it on our blog. So if you like a plugin or we have something new to announce, a new feature in our plugin system, subscribe to our blog and you will hear about it. So do we have some time for questions? Yeah. So I asked Jonathan to come up, and we have, I think, 5 minutes for questions if you guys have any. JIRA.
Yeah. Sorry. So the universal plugin manager for Confluence is pretty familiar with the functionality. It seems like it does a lot in a nicer. It's a bit cleaner looking.
Yeah.
So I have two questions. Right. The first one is with regards to JIRA. Does it offer the same functionality that it will download and persist the plugins into the database on the back end? And will it be able to install the plugins without a restart to JIRA?
Okay, so first of all, JIRA doesn't store its plugins in the database. It stores them on the file system. So
yeah, correct.
Right. So it downloads the plugins. It will store them in the file system. It does not solve the restart problem yet.
Okay.
So just briefly how this works. I mentioned earlier there are plugins and plugin modules. Okay, each plugin module can be annotated such that it requires a restart. So most of the JIRA-specific modules right now require a restart because JIRA was never built with dynamic plugins in mind. There are a bunch of caches that don't get cleared. Over time, we want to reduce the number of plugin modules that fit that category. So there are a very, very few number of plugins for JIRA that don't use any JIRA-specific functionality that actually can install like that and do it without a restart. But if you're using, say, a custom field or a workflow or whatever, that's going to require a restart for now. But the way it works is you hit install or upgrade, it downloads the file, it then basically gives you a notification and says there are 3 plugins waiting for restart, and then you can toggle it down and see what those 3 plugins are, and you restart them and they show up on the next launch. I will also point out that when you are doing development, there's and you're using the Atlassian SDK, it automatically runs JIRA for you, and it runs it with basically a dev mode equals true flag, and that tells JIRA to ignore the restart stuff. So it will attempt to reload all of the plugins that you install using the SDK. Some of them will work, some of them won't because of those caches I mentioned. But for right now, we're trying to make the development loop as tight as we can.
And the second question then is the universal plugin manager itself is a plugin, right?
Yes.
So what happens when that gets upgraded?
Basically, it can upgrade itself.
So right.
With a restart or without?
It can upgrade itself right now. We hope to add that in the future, but for right now, when you need to upgrade the plugin manager, you'll have to do it the old way where you download it and copy it into the directory.
I don't mean to be led. I think it's a great feature. I think it's got a really promising future, but
Sure.
I was hoping.
No, I mean, those are totally legit questions, and they've already come up in our feature backlog.
How does the Universal Plugin Manager, does it just look at the XML file to determine whether it's compatible with a new version, or does it actually do some
The compatibility
more holistic
information? The compatibility information all comes from the plugin exchange. So we go out to the internet and say, this instance of JIRA is running this version and it has these plugins installed, and then a bunch of stuff happens at the plugin exchange and it gives you a report back. So that's why it's so crucial to get that matrix right for plugin authors, because otherwise, you might have a version that's completely compatible, but no one thinks it is.
In front.
3 down here.
You had listed on the plugin exchange. I assume that the check is running off of the manually updated compatibility chart that you're running.
Correct.
Is there any report or information provided as to test coverage, for example, that comes with the tools that you can evaluate without having to dig into it yourself?
Not yet, but basically as we get more plugin builds running in this Bamboo thing that we've just introduced today, we're going to think about ways to bring that in a sense that makes sense to users, not just developers. And we also are kind of, I want to be careful about not being too negative, I guess, because I do development, I have builds break all the time, it just happens, and so I don't want to give people a bad impression that's not justified. Actually, yeah, she's been waiting.
I'm getting the impression that the Universal Plugin Manager will only work for plugins that are in the plugin exchange, so it can't hook up to my internal plugins that I'm managing.
Well, you can certainly install them and you can manage them, enable, disable, see the modules, but as far as compatibility goes, that information all comes from the plugin exchange.
So if I wanted to use the UPM to install my own local plugin, how would I point it at where I'm keeping them?
It just works like before in the old plugin manager, so you can have it on your file system and then upload it from the file system. Yeah.
Okay.
And then when you run your compatibility report, it'll show up in the bottom section, which is basically unknown. Like, we don't know what this plugin is, we don't know what the compatibility information is.
Fair enough.
So,
All right.
2 for 1, to your left.
And just adding to that, have you thought about allowing a developer to set up their own plugin repository so that it can talk to it?
We did briefly consider that. It basically,
hoping no one would ask.
It felt like a lot of work, and I wasn't really sure how many people would ever take advantage of that. But okay, I mean, absolutely file that for us, and let's start a discussion. And I want to understand more about how you would use that, and it's certainly on the table.
For example, one more, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Okay.
So there's somebody.
There's one over there.
This has to do with the new rendering language for the wiki.
Oh, okay.
How does it? Are you going to do the same kind of thing for JIRA with regard to the wiki rendering option for text fields?
We're probably not the best people to answer that question. It's for the JIRA product manager to answer.
Sorry.
But I think the short answer, not in the near future anyway. Yeah.
Talk to Ken.
Talk to Ken. No.
I don't have the answer.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you very much.